Picture this, all right. A bank heist, but instead of guns and masks, you got lines of code, stealing almost $1 billion. And nobody even notices it first. Crazy, right?
It really is.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're diving into the 2016 cyber attack on the Bangladesh Central Bank. And guys, this one's a doozy. We're talking twists and turns like you wouldn't believe.
Vulnerabilities in the system that makes you think twice about global finance, that's for sure.
Yeah, this whole thing, this massive crisis, it all started with a missing report. It was a bank holiday in Bangladesh, February 5th, 2016, and this guy, Zubair bin Huda, a director at the central bank in Dhaka, he goes to their dealing room, their most secure area. He's looking for the usual confirmations for, overnight transfers, but they're just not there. Poof. Gone. He figures, it's probably just a technical glitch.
Right, just a little hiccup, nothing to worry about. Happens all the time, right?
Right, exactly.
But then the next morning, things go from like 0 to 100 real quick. Bin Huda finds out that the Swift software, the system they use for international financial communication, it's down. Completely kaput. It's throwing up this error message saying a file is missing or changed. And at that point, it's way beyond just a simple error.
Yeah, no kidding. And get this, it gets even worse. That Saturday, just after noon, bin Huda manages to get 3 messages from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. The New York Fed.
Right, the big guys.
Exactly. They're freaking out because they've received 46 payment instructions from Bangladesh Bank in the last 24 hours, totaling almost $1 billion. Billion. With a B. And that's just unheard of for Bangladesh Bank. Never seen anything like it.
Whoa. Okay, so $1 billion in potentially bogus transfers, that's going to be a heart-stopping moment.
It was.
So bin Huda, he knows something seriously wrong. Bangladesh Bank, they don't make payments on weekends.
Yeah.
And even during the week, they rarely send more than like 2 or 3 transactions to the Fed. So he's scrambling. He tries to stop the payments, email Swift in Brussels, reports a big accident in their system, even tries calling the New York Fed. But they're closed. It's the weekend. So he sends more emails, faxes, everything he can think of, begging them to halt all the payments, hoping, praying someone sees his messages. And then he goes home for the weekend.
Nice.
Totally clueless about the sheer scale of this digital bank robbery that's going down. So this lack of communication, like instantly over the weekend, that really screwed up their initial response, didn't it?
It really did. I mean, think about it. Even for the most important financial stuff, sometimes you can't get a hold of anyone outside of business hours. It's kind of crazy when you think about it.
Yeah, that's wild.
But let's back up for a sec. What is SWIFT anyway?
Yeah, good point.
It stands for the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication. Basically, it's the network that makes international finance work. It connects like over 11,000 institutions all over the world. And until recently, Bangladesh Bank, they were still using teleprinters, like old school.
Really? Like those old-fashioned ticker tape things?
Yeah, pretty much. The electronic typewriter thing over phone lines. So when they switched to the digital SWIFT system, it seemed like a huge upgrade, right? More efficient, more secure. They even had this super secure dealing room on a constant surveillance.
Right, because, you're talking about moving millions of dollars across the world with a few keystrokes.
Exactly. But here's the thing. How did the hackers even get into this supposedly secure system? Well, probably through one single vulnerable terminal somewhere in the bank's network. Maybe someone visited a shady website or opened a bad email attachment. That's all it takes sometimes, human error, outdated software, and boom, the hackers are in. They plant their malware and they just wait. Could be months.
Sneaky. So they're just learning how the bank operates, stealing passwords, working their way towards that Swift server.
Exactly. And we're not talking about some amateur virus here. This was an APT, an advanced persistent threat, custom-built malware specifically designed to target banks. And get this, it was tailored for Bangladesh Bank.
So like a custom-made suit, but for hacking.
Exactly. And because it was brand new, the antivirus software had no clue. It just sailed right through.
Wow. So the fact that it was made just for them, that's going to tell you how planned and targeted this whole attack was.
It does. It's scary how sophisticated these guys were. And it wasn't just about sending those fake payment orders through SWIFT. They covered their tracks, too. Deleted those orders from the bank's own SWIFT database. No evidence on the printed statements, nothing in the internal records. They even messed with the balances in the bank's account at the New York Fed.
So it looked like no money was even missing.
Exactly. It was like a magic trick, a digital disappearing act.
And they timed it perfectly, too. They started those transfers on Thursday afternoon in New York, knowing that Friday was a bank holiday in Bangladesh, and then came the weekend.
Brilliant.
Talk about taking advantage of the system. So by the time Bangladesh Bank realized what was happening on Sunday, it was too late, and they couldn't even reach anyone at the Fed.
Nope. The hackers had planned for everything. Okay, so let's talk about where this money was actually going. Almost $1 billion, right? It was spread out over 5 different accounts, 4 in the Philippines and 1 in Sri Lanka. And here's where things get a little complicated. These banks, they weren't directly connected to Fedwire, the Fed's own system for big electronic payments.
Right, Fedwire.
So the Fed uses these middlemen, these correspondent banks, to handle the payments. Big names like Deutsche Bank, Bank of New York Mellon, Citibank, Wells Fargo.
So like a delivery service for money, but on a global scale.
Pretty much. And the crazy thing is, the hackers almost pulled it off. Those first 5 payments, $20 million, they went through without a hitch.
Seriously, 20 million just like that.
Yeah. But then Lady Luck stepped in. Or maybe it was just dumb luck for the hackers.
What happened?
The next 30 payments, get this, $850 million, they got flagged. And the reason? The word Jupiter.
Jupiter, like the planet.
No, Jupiter was the name of the RCBC branch in the Philippines where the money was going.
Yeah.
But get this, there was this shipping company, completely unrelated, called Jupiter Seaways Shipping, and they were on a sanctions list, for dodging sanctions against Iran. So the Fed system, it saw Jupiter and thought, hold up, something's fishy here.
What are the odds?
Right. Total coincidence. But it saved them hundreds of millions of dollars. And then the compliance officers at the Fed, they started digging. They saw all these huge payments going to the same 4 accounts at the RCBC Jupiter branch, all brand new accounts. So they put a stop to it.
So someone at the New York Fed deserves a medal.
Seriously. And it gets better. Remember that $20 million that went through to the Shalika Foundation in Sri Lanka?
Yeah.
Well, some clerk at the receiving bank, he's like, wait a minute, this is a tiny NGO. Why are they getting $20 million? So he calls up Deutsche Bank, who's handling the transfer, and asks them to double check. And guess what? They found a typo. The word foundation was misspelled, just one little typo.
And that stopped the whole thing.
And it did. Deutsche Bank called Bangladesh Bank. They confirmed it was a scam, and boom, payments stopped. $20 million saved because someone noticed a typo.
So at the end of the day, $81 million still got through.
Yeah.
Not $1 billion, but still, that's a huge amount of money.
Yeah.
And, it really shook people's trust in the whole international banking system.
Oh, absolutely.
But okay, so they've stolen the money. Now what? How do you turn digital cash into, real money that you can spend?
That's where the Philippines comes in. The investigation zeroed in on this woman, Maya Santos Taguito. She was the branch manager at that RCBC Jupiter branch where the $81 million landed.
Okay, so she's our person of interest in Manila.
Yep. And here's where it gets juicy. They found a link to casino junkets, specifically through this guy, Kim Wong.
Casino junkets, like those high roller trips they show in movies.
Exactly. Wong, he was a businessman from Hong Kong. He brought these wealthy Chinese gamblers to casinos in Manila, gave them credit to gamble with, and then took a cut of their winnings or losses.
Sounds like a sweet deal.
It was. But the thing is, the casino industry in the Philippines back then, it was a bit of a Wild West, perfect for money laundering.
Really? Why is that?
The Philippines had these anti-money laundering laws, right? But casinos, they were exempt. Big loophole. So transactions were basically secret, and nobody knew who the gamblers were.
So it's like a black hole for money.
You got it. Now, Santos Taguito's lawyer, he claims that Wong introduced her to some Filipino guys and asked her to open accounts for them at her branch. But later, other RCBC employees said those guys didn't even exist. They said Santos Taguito forged signatures to create the accounts.
So was she in on the scam, or was she just tricked by Wong?
That's the million-dollar question. But either way, she made those accounts, and they sat there doing nothing for months until February 5th, 2016. The same day those SWIFT messages went out.
What a coincidence.
Right. Suddenly, $81 million is pouring into those accounts. And Santos Taguito, she vouches for the clients, says everything's legit. There's even a witness who saw her leaving the bank that day with a bag full of cash, like $400,000 in cash. Whoa.
And then, bam, it's the weekend. Plus, Chinese New Year, nobody's checking anything. By Tuesday, when everyone's back at work, that $81 million is gone. Santos Taguito had already moved it all out.
And nobody noticed.
Well, back at RCBC headquarters, they had a huge pile of SWIFT messages to go through after the holiday. And buried in there, somewhere, was the stop payment order from Bangladesh Bank.
Oh, no.
But it was too late. They didn't see it until 11 a.m. And by then, the money was already gone. Santos Seguido had sent it to another account and then to this company called Philrim, owned by these two, Michael and Salud Bautista.
Okay, so the money's with Philrim now, and there's supposed to be a remittance company, right? Like Western Union?
Yeah, but they got involved in something way bigger. Philrim converted a big chunk of that money, $61 million, into Philippine pesos. And that same night, a courier for Philrim picked up bags of cash, millions of pesos, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and delivered them to the Soler Resort and Casino in Manila.
The casino. So the money's going from digital to physical and straight into the casino. Exactly. And who's there to receive it? Kim Wong, Salud Bautista, and one of Wong's buddies. It was a party.
A very expensive party.
Right. And the Bautistas, they claimed they made multiple deliveries, millions more in pesos and dollars. Some went to Wong's associate, some directly to the casino, and some to Wong's company. Wong himself, he admitted to getting a big chunk of the cash, but he said the Bautistas kept a lot for themselves too. And then there were these two other guys, Gao Shuhua and Ding Zais, also involved in the junket business. They got huge sums of cash too.
So the money's flowing like a river through this casino.
It was, and inside those VIP rooms, you know, where they play baccarat for insane amounts of money, it's the perfect place to launder money. Nobody's checking IDs, nobody's reporting winnings. The gamblers, they just took the cash and vanished.
Poof. Gone. So who was really behind this? Was it just a bunch of random hackers?
Well, Bangladesh Bank hired this cybersecurity firm, FireEye, to investigate. They couldn't reveal everything they found, but other firms looked at the evidence and found some interesting stuff.
What did they find?
They found links to this group called the Lazarus Group. And U.S. intelligence agencies believe they're working for North Korea.
North Korea. Seriously?
That's the theory. The malware used in the Bangladesh Bank Heist, it was very similar to the stuff used in the Sony Pictures hack and those Dark Soul attacks on South Korea. Even some similarities to the WannaCry ransomware attack.
That's crazy. So what's North Korea's angle? They're not exactly known for their cyber skills.
Well, they're under heavy sanctions, right? So they need money. And targeting banks in developing countries, places with weaker security, it's an easy way to score big.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, it's like robbing a convenience store instead of Fort Knox.
Exactly. Plus, North Korea has this weird fascination with casinos. Even though gambling is illegal there, they've been caught running online casinos, and they've even talked about launching casino cruise ships.
Really? So maybe they wanted the money to fund their own casino empire.
Maybe. It's hard to say for sure. But here's the thing. They only managed to recover about 20% of the stolen money.
Seriously. So most of it is just gone.
Pretty much. Kim Wong gave back about $15 million. The Bautistas from Philrim offered to return some, but Bangladesh Bank said no. And those two Chinese guys, they skipped town to Macau, which is basically a haven for shady money, including, probably, North Korean money.
So the money's probably in North Korea now, funding who knows what.
It's likely.
And what about the people involved? Did anyone face consequences?
Well, Bangladesh Bank sued RCBC, saying they were negligent, but RCBC is fighting back. They're threatening a countersuit. And Wells Fargo, they actually settled a similar case, so maybe that'll help Bangladesh Bank get something back.
But there's hope.
Maybe. The Fed, they finally set up a 247 hotline for emergencies like this, so that's something. And in the Philippines, they made casinos report large cash transactions. But enforcing those rules, that's a different story.
Right, because rules are only good if people follow them.
Exactly. But here's the thing that really gets me. Out of everyone involved, only Maya Santos Teguido, the branch manager, actually got charged with a crime.
Seriously, nobody else.
Right. Nope. Kim Wong, the Bautistas, they all walked free. And that really pissed off some people in the Philippines. They felt like their justice system was too weak to handle this kind of sophisticated crime.
It's like the perfect crime. You steal millions, nobody can prove who did it, and nobody goes to jail.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And the money. It's probably funding some shady stuff in North Korea. We'll probably never know for sure.
So what's the takeaway from all this? What does this mean for the average person?
It means that the global financial system, it's a lot more fragile than we think. One little security breach and boom, millions, even billions of dollars can disappear.
It's kind of scary when you think about it.
It is. And, you know, for all the fancy technology involved, it was human error that made this whole thing possible. Someone clicked on a bad link, someone opened a bad email, and on the other end, someone noticed a typo, someone questioned a suspicious transaction. Those people, they made all the difference.
It's like a constant battle between human ingenuity and human stupidity.
Exactly. And this whole attack, it shows you how smart and organized these hackers can be. They didn't just hack a computer. They hacked the whole system. They knew how banks work. They knew how to exploit the weaknesses. It's impressive in a twisted kind of way.
It is. And, if a country like North Korea can pull this off, what else is out there? What other threats are we not even aware of?
That's the question, isn't it? It makes you think, what can we do to protect ourselves to make the system stronger? It's a challenge, a big one.
It is.
Yeah.
And this whole story, it's a reminder. We need to be careful, we need to be aware, and we need to keep asking questions.
Couldn't agree more.
Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive. Until next time, stay safe out there, both in the real world and online.
Absolutely. See you next time.